And, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. It is another episode of the world famous, world renowned, and I believe it's been unanimously voted everyone's favorite podcast. And if it hasn't, I'm going to continue to harp on that until it is. And that, of course, is Keeping It Rio. And today we've got episode 176. And my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, is a mover and a shaker, one of those guys in the industry that I definitely want to get a good conversation from. Got to speak with very briefly here recently in person, but definitely needed to get a little bit more because this man is bringing some value to our industry. So with no hesitation whatsoever, please allow me the honor, ladies and gentlemen, of welcoming the co-founder and owner of the Limitless Roofing Group, your friend and mine, Mr. Dylan McCabe. Dylan, welcome to
Awesome.
Keeping It Real, buddy. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Absolutely. That's a pretty good intro right there, if I may say so myself. I'm getting
Great.
I'm getting those Bruce Buffer vibes going on over here. So, anyways, thanks for being on Keeping It Rio today, my friend. I appreciate it. I know you got a lot going on. You just came back from vacation and getting back into the groove of things. So, tell the fans a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to kind of dig into your business and what you're doing here to help the industry, because I think a lot of people still don't know who exactly is Dylan. So, Dylan, nobody could describe you better than you yourself. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend.
For sure. Yeah. So, I'm an entrepreneur and got into the industry 4 years ago and saw an opening with buying groups. It really saw that there weren't any, which I couldn't believe. But that's kind of who I am as far as roofing goes. If you want to, how far back do you want to go?
give us like, I was born on a sunny day in 1987, whatever. As far back as you want to go. We're definitely going to get into the roofing stuff, but I'd love for people to know a little bit about the guy as well, so we can kind of understand his thought process through the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. I was born in Bedford, Virginia, which
Nice.
most people have not heard of because it's in between Roanoke and Lynchburg, and it's just a bunch of farmland. It's one of the most beautiful places ever. But man, I grew up in a poor home, broken home. Like a lot of people, mom and dad couldn't make it work. Dad left when I was 4. So I've definitely dealt with all the baggage that comes with that. We moved to Texas when I was 6 years old, and just grew up as a normal kid. Had actually a lot of learning problems. So was in special ed. I would leave the class, teacher would give classwork to do, and I would leave and go to the special class. And I stayed there until high school. And the only reason I wasn't in special ed in high school is because I didn't want to be. I thought, I don't want to be like a freak or something. And then, graduating high school, man, I didn't even try to take the SATs or anything. I was like, that's going to be a total joke. So I didn't do that. And then I just, like a lot of guys, man, after high school, just partied and got in all kinds of stuff and just had kind of a rougher past with all that. And then, man, I had a kind of a radical conversion experience to Christianity. And the way I describe it is God pursued me. I was not pursuing God. I didn't hit rock bottom. I was having a lot of fun. I wasn't going anywhere in life, but that really changed my life. And then, man, I went to Bible college and got a degree in leadership. And then I started preaching a lot in churches. And I started preaching a lot in prisons because I thought, I want to be around guys with a little bit of a rougher background. I don't want to be around a bunch of people that are all buttoned up. So I did prison ministry for 8 years, preaching in prisons and also walking cell to cell in the segregated blocks in the prisons where they keep the worst of the worst. Like guys where it's one man per cell. He's locked up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he's in there because he's a murderer or a confirmed gang member, or he's in there for his protection because the prison guards have been made privy to the fact that somebody's trying to kill him. So I thought, those guys can't go to chapel. I want to go talk to those guys. So I spent 8 years spending hours and hours every week talking to Aryan Brotherhood members, Mexican Mafia members, and all this stuff. And then I moved to Dallas to get a master's in theology. And while I was in Dallas back in 2009, I really felt led into the world of entrepreneurship. And so between trying to buy a chemical recycling company, having a vending business, having an online course for SEO, having a digital marketing company, and a number of other things, I finally landed in roofing.
Yeah, that's the general way that people end up in roofing, is through a roundabout way, and it's usually on accident. And I can really appreciate your story there, because a lot of people that I talk to have a similar, not that kind of background, but I was doing okay. I wasn't really living up to my potential. I wasn't doing what I know I can do. And I had this moment, I had this epiphany, and all of a sudden, like, something just changed. And before we get into modern times and what you're doing right now, I do want to kind of ask you about that a little bit. Do you remember having that moment where you just thought, you know what? There is so much more for me to do. Like you said, you were chosen, and you're being qualified as you go. Obviously, that's the beautiful thing. And you had to acknowledge that at some point. You had to look in the mirror. You had to have that moment where you were just sitting somewhere and you thought, there's more, and I'm going to take action on that. So, do you have a story about that time, and how you kind of led yourself to that change in mindset that ultimately catapulted you into a completely different trajectory in life?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. So I was about 21 years old. All I did really was work different jobs. I probably had a different girlfriend every month or two. I mean, couldn't keep a stable relationship, and basically just went to the gym all the time. Well, while I was at the gym, I met this guy, a real crowded gym. And I met this guy that wanted to work out on some equipment with me. And and he was so friendly, I thought he was gay. And then I found out he's not gay; he's a Christian. So he became my first. And I don't have any issues with gay people. I just thought he's just
Yeah,
so
there's your disclaimer for
he's
sure.
so
No worries.
friendly. Like, why is he being so friendly to me? And I would run into him all the time. I'd go to the gym in the morning and happen to run into him. Go to the gym at night, happen to run into him. We just struck up a friendship. Well, he became my first real Christian friend, and I grew up in a non-religious home. We didn't necessarily disbelieve anything. We just didn't believe anything, didn't talk about anything, never went to church. It just wasn't a part of life. But for some reason, when I became a teenager and into high school, I developed some pretty heavy skepticism toward Christianity in particular. And I don't know why. I didn't I didn't meet any Christians who were hypocrites or anything. But if I met somebody who said, I'm a Christian, I would immediately go in on the interrogation. Like, really? Why do you believe the Bible? Like, you believe some book written by men and you're telling me this is God's truth? Like, I just couldn't stand it. So I meet this guy, and he invited me to hang out with some of his friends. I got into a big debate with them about religion and God and all that stuff. But I started meeting with him about every 2 weeks consistently for about 2 years at a place called Cafe Brazil in Houston. And we met over tea. We had Egyptian licorice tea, which is a really tasty, sweet tea.
Nice.
And I would just hurl all my skepticism at him and ask him questions and really try to get him to leave Christianity. Well, after 2 years of this, I remember the conversation I had with him. His name's Roy. And I said, Roy, you have something so special about you. And I know it's all connected to this Christianity thing. And I know I don't have it. Like, you just have this goodness about you I'm very attracted to. And I know I don't have it. I know none of my family members have it. And none of my friends have it. And I want to know more. And I said, so I want the best book you can give me on Christianity. And I want reasons for why to believe that it's true. I don't just want to learn what it teaches. And he said, okay, I have a book for people like you that are really skeptical, that love to tear ideas apart and poke holes in things. And so the next day he comes by my house with a copy of Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis is the guy that wrote the Chronicles of Narnia books. So I thought, man, I'm going to rip this to shreds. Like, I'm going to poke all the holes. I'm going to show all the contradictions in this book. And so I start reading this book as a very heavy skeptic. I would have called myself what they call a hard agnostic. There could be some truth up there, but you can't know what it is. It's not possible. So I start reading this book, and every page I read, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Next page, same experience. Next chapter. And I get halfway through this book, and I'm like, I agree with every single page of this book. And for me to agree with everything I'm reading is like a miracle. Then I had to have knee surgery. So the first thing God did was put Roy in my life. The second thing was this book. And then God did two more things in a very short time. I had knee surgery. We had to have a guy come cut the lawn. It's the middle of the summertime in Houston. It's blazing hot outside. This guy is a total stranger. He's a Mexican lawn service dude, comes over. I take him to the backyard and he's just smiling. He's like, all right, I'm going to take care of this for you. And then out of nowhere, he goes, you know what, Dylan? God's telling me to talk to you about Jesus. And I'm like, the normal me would have been like, dude, get the F out of my yard. But something told me to sit there and listen. Like I've had this really intense thought, like listen. And he asked me a question I had never heard before. He said, Dylan, do you have any idea how much God loves you? Do you have any clue about that? And I was just like, no, not really. And I had, kind of a rough spot before, within 6 months prior to that, where I'd attacked my brother-in-law, found out some messed up stuff was happening in my family, and I decided I was going to take him out. Police got called. It was Christmas night, just violence and anger. And so for him to talk to me about how much God loved me, I was like, what is this, And man, he went off. He's like, God knew we were going to have this conversation before you were even born. God knows how many hairs are on your head, all this stuff. And I mean, he just kept going. I mean, for like 30 minutes, he's like preaching a sermon to me about Jesus, sin, forgiveness, God's love, heaven and hell. I mean, he went through all of it. And then he throws his arm around me and he's like, come on, man, you can be saved right now. Just pray to receive him and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, you clearly believe this. Like you clearly are really passionate about this, but I am not. Like, I have to believe this 100% if I'm going to do something like that. And he goes, okay, well, you go inside and you ask God to show you the truth. I was like, okay. So I went in the house and I prayed, maybe for the second or third time in my whole life. And I said, God, I don't know who you are and I don't know what you are, but I know you're there. C.S. Lewis has convinced me of that. And everything this guy just said sounds amazing, but I do not want to believe a lie. And there's all these different ideas about you, from Islam to Hinduism to Christianity to atheism. I want to know the truth. Please show me the truth. So that was the third thing that happened. The last thing happened a couple of weeks later, and I'm at this wedding. I'm the best man in the wedding. I got called out of the blue by a guy that I was really good friends with in like 7th grade. Calls me out of the blue. Haven't talked to him in almost 10 years. And he's like, hey, man, I'm getting married. And my first thought was like, oh, man, sucker, now you're going to have a ball and chain. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm really hoping you can make it. I want you to be the best man. And I was like, wow, Chris, thank you, man. Of course, I'll be there. So I get to the wedding. The wedding happens. We go to the wedding reception, and I'm meeting all these people I've never met before. And I meet this old timer, and we get to talking. And he's holding something in his hands. And I said, what's that? And he said, this is one of the happiest days of my life. I'm the grandfather of the bride. And he said, this is their wedding gift. This represents the most important thing in life. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of a philosophical guy. I like thinking about this stuff. Well, what's the most important thing in life? He said, and it looked like a coin collection. And it had one gold coin up here and then a row of coins underneath. He said the one gold coin on top represents Jesus Christ, and the 12 gold coins underneath represent his 12 disciples. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually reading a book about Christianity right now called Mere Christianity. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, young man? God's telling me to talk to you about Jesus. And I knew that there's no way that Mexican lawn service guy 2 weeks ago and this guy knew each other. I knew that they didn't go to churches where the pastors are just saying, hey, go up to random people and use this phrase. It's just something wild was happening. And he said, young man, I know God has plans for you, but I know you won't believe in him unless I share with you what happened to me. And he said, I've only shared this with my family members and a few very close friends, but I know I need to share this with you today. And it would take me another 15 minutes to share his story, but he basically shared a story of getting in a car accident back in the 40s or 50s. I mean, because he told me this 20 years ago, and he said it happened 20 or 30 years ago. And he basically had a near-death experience and experienced heaven for a while, experienced God. He claimed it was Jesus. He described in great detail the love that he experienced. And it just blew me away, man. It just blew me away. And I thought about it every day for about 2 weeks. And every day I had the same thought, like, is it true? Like, it's either true or it's not true. And then one day I was standing outside looking up at the sky. I was just thinking about stuff, and it all just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought, wait a second. I meet this guy at the gym that's got something so special about him, and it's all connected to Christianity. Then I read this book that doesn't just make good sense, it makes perfect sense. Then I meet a total stranger in my backyard who says, God is telling me to talk to you about Jesus. And everything he said just hit me in my heart. Then I meet another total stranger at a wedding that said, God is telling me to talk to you about Jesus. And he claims he met Jesus when he died. And I thought, oh my God, I know you now. You have revealed yourself to me. And I said, it's all true. It's all true. Everything I've heard is true. And I had tears of joy, man. I had no sense of guilt or shame or anything for all the stuff that I'd done, the girlfriends, the drugs, all of it. And I immediately that day made a hardcore turning point and left all of that. Stopped drinking, stopped doing drugs. I didn't date for 10 years. I thought, I don't know how to treat a woman. I'm going to learn how to treat a woman before I have another girlfriend. Just pursued the Lord basically. And I felt like I was being walked around like a dog on a leash by the devil. And I didn't even know it. So I made such a hardcore change because I thought there's no way you're getting that collar back on my neck. It's never going to happen. But that was a turning point. And then, like I said, I went to Bible college and got into preaching and stuff that I never dreamed I'd be doing.
Man, I'll tell you what, Dylan, that is an amazing story. And you recognize that there is a higher purpose for yourself, and you're going to be a leader of many, and you're going to help people. And I know that there's a lot of in betweens, like you said, this is a 8-year period in between, but we do, in the interest of time, want to discuss what you've got currently going on as well. So you go through this period, you get to the other end, and like you said, you find your way into the roofing industry, which, congratulations. We all somehow found our way into the roofing industry, and now it's just one big happy family. But for me, it was a complete accident. I had a bad day. I was working at a drywall company, and I had a bad day. And on my way home, there was a roofing supply company that was hiring for drivers. And I went and drove a truck and did conveyor truck roof loading for 12 years. Ended up opening a branch of that down in North Carolina. And then I've somehow migrated over to Texas. But throughout the entire process, the coolest thing has been the people that I've been able to meet and, those relationships that you've built over the years. So tell me a little bit, number one, about your entry into the roofing industry. Like, how specifically did you decide roofing? And then, we'll dig into how you came up with Limitless after you kind of tell that part of it. But I think you're doing something awesome, and every good story that's going to change millions and millions of lives needs to have a starting point. So let's start at that starting point right here and tell the world how you're about to change it.
Yeah, man. So I got into roofing. I was in healthcare for a couple of years with a technology and consulting company. That's where I came across buying groups in the first place. But that was a tough situation. I was the first sales guy they hired, and it was just really stressful to try to hit the numbers and quarterly goals. And just for a number of reasons, I started looking for something else. And I reached out to a buddy of mine named Miller. He's one of the co-founders of Limitless. And his wife and my wife were really good friends, but he and I were never really close. But I'd run into him maybe at a Christmas get together or something like that. But I'd always noticed he seemed really like laid back. Or we'd go to a Christmas party and he'd be, be like, what are you up to? He's like, oh, I'm just taking the month off and going to do some hunting and stuff. I'm like, man, this guy's got it made. He owns a roofing company. He takes off whenever he wants. Anyway, so it always stuck out to me. So I reached out to Miller, and yes, it is Miller, like the beer. And I said, hey, man, I'd like to get together with you. I'm looking for what's next. Would love to just talk with you about it. So we had lunch, talked to him about, hey, I've been in sales for years. I'd be interested in roofing sales. What do you think? No pressure at all, but is there an opportunity here? And he said, you know what? Let's talk to our wives about it because they're really close and we don't want to screw that up. So
good move.
So we both talked to our wives, and they were like, both of them said the same thing. They were like, yeah, we thought you guys should have been working together years ago. So me and Miller meet again, and he says, look, you can work for me I'm going to teach you everything you need to know in a year and a half to 2 years to where you can start your own company. He said, you're an entrepreneurial guy. He said, you're going to want to start your own company and I will help you do that. But in the meantime, you can work for me and do sales and learn the business. And I was just like, wow, what a way to start, you know? So I started selling roofs for Miller, but I'm a creative guy. So we immediately started a podcast called the Limitless Roofing Show. And I'm like, let's interview roofing owners and see if there's a way we can serve them, see if there's a common problem they mentioned that we can solve. So we got started that way. And then the idea of a buying group kept coming up. And so we actually started a CEO group, Limitless CEO groups, just bringing owners together in like a peer advisory group, owners helping owners with insight and best practices and all that. And we started asking our members, have you ever been a part of a buying group? And everybody's like, what do you mean? Like a group that buys roofing companies? No, a buying group, like a collective buying power. And everybody said no. And so we knew we were onto something there.
I'll tell you, that's something that in my 26 years, you know, I was in distribution, and we had an independent distribution that was based in Columbus, Ohio. We opened a branch down in North Carolina, and I've been dealing with roofing contractors for literally the last 26 years, thousands and thousands of roofing contractors. And to me, this is what really was so amazing about Limitless. And you just hit the nail on the head when you said, nobody's ever heard of this. Nobody's ever been a part of a buying group because it's not something that's really ever been mentioned. You know, I've seen a couple of them like on the distribution side, but as far as for contractors, it's almost been unheard of forever. So you come up with this idea and you're going to start, you know, implementing this in some way, shape, or form. Tell me a little bit about that process. Once you say, hey, you know what, there's definitely a need here. These roofing company owners are all on board. They all seem like they would be interested in joining and collaborating. So how do you kick something off like this? Because you don't just flip a switch one day and then have a buying group that's got the authority to, you know, work with major manufacturers and major technology people and such. So how does that beginning? I love that you just adjusted the camera because now you've got your logo perfect. So
that's right.
How does that beginning, you know, after you've come up with the idea, you've got some people on board, what do we do now?
Yeah, it's a neat story. So it is extremely difficult to get a seat at the table with manufacturers and suppliers because a national deal like a buying group, it goes all the way up to the president or the CEO. So you can't just call the CEO of Beacon or the CEO of SRS or of Tamco and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about a business idea. And our problem was I'm a nobody. Nobody knows who the heck Dylan McCabe is. I've only been in roofing for like, at this point, 2 years as a roofing sales guy. Nobody knows who I am. We got this little CEO group, Limitless CEO group that we started. It just so happened that one of our CEO group members had a small one location roofing supply company in Longview, Texas. Yeah. That got acquired by SRS Distribution. And during the acquisition process, he got to know Dan Tinker, the CEO, Matt McDermott, who's president of their Heritage Group. He was over all their mergers and acquisitions, and a few other guys. And so this guy, this South African guy that was a member of our group, his name is Doss Rousseau. Doss said, you know, I know Dan Tinker, and I think this is a wonderful idea. I'm happy to email him and connect you guys. And I'm thinking, man, this is a long shot, but let's go. So he emails Dan Tinker, the CEO of SRS. Dan emails back within 30 minutes and says, hey, I'm on vacation, but I'd love to meet with you guys. What's your availability in August? At this point, it was May. And so we nailed down a date, got a meeting with SRS. I go to their headquarters in McKinney, really fancy building. I go to this huge conference room table, or this room where they have big executive meetings. And it's a conference room table, probably seats 40 people, huge oval table. And I'm sitting here, and across from me sits Dan Tinker, the CEO, Troy Baker, the VP of sales, and Matt McDermott, who was the head of all their mergers and acquisitions. And it was like an episode of Shark Tank, man. I mean, it was like, here's my idea. Well, why would we do that? What do you guarantee here? What about this? What about that? And I mean, we just hashed it out, and I had a presentation ready. I forced them to like, okay, let's stop with the questions. All of it's going to be answered in the presentation. Went through it. And about halfway through the meeting, so about an hour in, I'll never forget it. Dan said, "What would we have to do to launch by January?" And I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to do it. And he started thinking creatively and strategically about how to make an impact in the market, how to launch, how to work together, who needs to do what. And we got started with SRS, man. They took a chance 2 years ago on us. And that was the first domino that fell. And then we started getting deals with everything from general liability insurance to marketing to shingles to you name it.
Yeah, and whoa, like I mean, that's unheard of, right? That right there
Yeah.
just basically describes what you discussed in our first segment about, your path has been basically determined long ago. And I don't get overly religious or anything like that, but anytime I hear a story like this, it's like, dude, you probably didn't even have any real understanding as to the magnitude of the people you were talking to. You probably got there and then it hit you in the face like a frying pan, but it's like, you know, that doesn't happen. That does not happen, especially in the roofing industry. And for you to get into that room and to nail your presentation on that level, I mean, that's all you can say is, dude, nice work, because that's crazy. It
No,
doesn't
it's
happen.
true.
So
No, it's by the grace of God, man. Like I'm not a negotiator. I'm not like some master negotiator. I read that book, like going into the meeting, I read Never Split the Difference, which is written by an FBI negotiator. I couldn't remember all that stuff. It's like, hey, this sounds great. Like ask calibrated questions and do all this stuff. And it's just like, it all goes out the window when you're sitting across from a guy who negotiates for a living, like the CEO of SRS.
yeah.
That's what he does. And it's just by the grace of God, man. I'm thankful they took a chance on us. And it's just gotten better and better, but it's challenging because when you start something new in the roofing industry, like I thought, okay, we've got to deal with SRS. We got a national program. We're going to have thousands of members in the first 30 days of going live with this thing. And it was the opposite. Like we went live with this and it was just crickets. I mean, everybody's like, what is that? What's a buying group? Is this a scam? So now that we're 2.5 years in, it's way different. People are starting to recognize Limitless better, but boy, it was tough at first.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next set of questions on that, because just like you said, nobody's seen this before. You come into the industry and people in our industry, have been screwed over by programs in the past, and things have always come out that are too good to be true, and they end up being too good to be true. So, you bring something in and there is going to be that rough patch up front where it's like, dude, whatever, man, your snake oil or whatever you're trying to sell, I don't need it. I've been doing this my whole life. So even with SRS pushing you and having the support, I'm sure in those early days before it starts really taking off, you probably get a little nervous and think, oh my, SRS is going to probably drop us because we're not doing what we promised. And, the whole thing could be over before it starts. So tell me a little bit about, once you get over that hump, there's plenty of sleepless nights. There's plenty of, oh my gosh, what have I done? Is this really going to work? And then you hit that moment where it's like, boom, something just clicks. And all of a sudden you start seeing more and more people. You're getting more and more attention. You're getting more and more partners, because quite frankly, you've got some amazing partners for the short amount of time you've been doing it. So it had to hit pretty quickly and it had to take off pretty fast, because you've done like 10 years worth of work already and you've accomplished that. But tell me about that moment. You're probably scared, and then boom, it hits. And now, oh my gosh, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Yeah, no, you're right, man. I don't care what business you're in. If you're the business owner, you you've got a tough row to hoe the first year or two. I mean, it's just freaking hard, and there's no way around it. I don't care how many leadership books you've read, entrepreneurship books. I don't care. You have to pay the cost of entrepreneurship, and that price is your state of mind, how much you worry, how much you fret over making it ahead, making payroll. I mean, it's a battle. So yeah, we got through that part of it, and but that a lot of that goes back to just perseverance, man. It's hard. It's like perseverance. Another word for perseverance is long suffering. Like that's what patience means, long suffering. So the ability to just suffer through that mountain climb and get to the point to where you start reaping some of the benefits. But for us, it's all boiled down to relationships. So we've got a great advisory board on it for our group, and then we've just got relationships like Beacon. We've brought Beacon on as a partner, which I guess this is probably the first time I've publicly mentioned it. We're announcing it this week. They've been amazing to work with, and there's just tons of support and collaboration there. Tamco is a huge partner. They are investing lots of money into improving their new products, changing the reputation they've had in the industry as a builder grade shingle, and just working with those guys has been phenomenal. So making those relationships and getting that high level collaboration, that's what kind of caused the turning point for us. We probably spent the first year just trying to get this thing off the ground, and then we started getting some really key relationships, and that's really what caused the turn. And then internally, I mean, your team, we brought this has been me and Miller Whedon and Steve Patrick for the last 2.5 years. And about a year ago, we brought Robert Posey on. He's our chief revenue officer. Well, we bring Robert on, and all of a sudden we just start going like that. So it's like a who, not how situation. You're constantly thinking, how do I do this? How do I grow my company? How do I systemize? You got to quit asking how and think who is the right person to bring on to do these things. And that's a book, by the way, Who, Not How. So I didn't come up with that, but that's been a huge part of it.
Yeah, and that is so on point. You spend a lot of time focusing on the systems and processes when in reality, putting someone in that position to just take care of it for you is the best way to go about it. They can focus on that specifically, and you can focus on building. And I love that it's been about relationships. Like I said, you've got some of the best partners in the industry. I mean, I was looking yesterday that Atlas is going to be a sponsor at your upcoming event. I know you work with Business 411. I think you work with Roofer, correct?
We're talking with Roofer.
Okay, well, hey, Roofer, y'all need to work together. Roofer sponsors Keepin at Rio, so big fan of them. I saw a lot of the distribution channels. I mean, you even had tire companies and things like that. So now you've got this up and running. People are seeing that there is actually value in this, and that they're starting to say, "Hey, you know what? This guy Limitless has something going." People start joining. Tell me a little bit about, number one, the specifics as far as who is your ideal person to be working with to join up with Limitless. I think, of a lot of companies that are 0 to 3 million that really could benefit from the buying power, from the rebates and things like that. But I think it also applies to $100 million companies. So tell me a little bit about the diversity that you've got in your group so far, and some of the different companies and how they kind of blend together and help each other.
Yeah, that's a good question. The goal of the group is to make you more profitable as a roofing owner. It's that simple. And we do that in 2 ways: through buying power, so group deals and discounts on the stuff you're already spending money on, but also a community, because I really think the best source of learning is coaches and consultants are great, but if you own a roofing company, I think it can be completely game changer if you've got a challenge and you share that. Man, our production is just very cumbersome. I know we can do it better. How are you doing production? Oh, holy crap. You've got your production systemized out the wazoo, and you've got production manager on site at every job. How do you afford that? Oh, yes, I can see how that frees up your sales guys to sell more and make sure that your crews don't end up with no shingles left at the end of every job, miraculously. Wow. Just these kinds of light bulb moments that happen in that community, that's what enables people to level up. I think there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. But at the very basic level, when people join our group, they increase their profits, because it's like joining Costco. That's why the logo looks like the Costco logo. You join and you save. It's that simple. We have a very aggressive rebate program with Tamco. We have a great program with Beacon. We've got a great program with Atlas. We can save you 10 to 15% typically on general liability insurance, and the list goes on. So you take all these things you spend money on as a company owner, we will absolutely reduce your cost of business. And that's great. But who cares if you're saving money and you're not learning how to grow as a leader and a business person? So that's where the community comes in.
Yeah, and I think that is such an amazing concept because in our industry there are a lot of different characteristics of people who get into it, you know. Some people are higher level thinkers than others, and that's just a nice way of saying, you know, there are some idiots in our industry, but there are a lot of people that just don't know. They've got pure intentions and they want to do something special, but they just don't have the ability to maybe hire a $10,000 a month or whatever coach. So to have a group like this where people that are successful that have built larger scale companies are willing to join in and help, it really does kind of expose the good side of our industry. And for that, you know, I definitely want to say thank you because I think our industry could always use as much emphasis on the good people and the willingness to help complete strangers who, you know, they're even considered to be our competition, which I'm sure, you know, I don't have any competition. The only competition I'm worried about is the guy in the mirror. And if we can help make our industry better as a whole, or can help a small family company take that next step that maybe, you know, puts generational wealth into their equation, that's what it's all about. So getting those things together requires a very special type of character. And obviously, this is where you come into play. And I think it's amazing that in such a short period of time, you're making such a big impact. Um, let's talk a little bit now, my friend, about the future. So, Limitless is up and running. I heard about you at Win the Storm this past, I guess, February, March, whenever it was, over in Dallas. And it was really cool because you guys had probably the most energetic booth. I'd say between Detach, Reset, Solar, and Limitless, you guys really kind of brought a different energy to the trade shows that I hadn't seen in many years. And I'm walking around the corner, and your guy Caston, who actually was a guest on my show about maybe, I don't know, 2 or so months ago, he was out there and his energy just instantly grabbed me. And it was like, dude, this guy, you know, he believes in what he's doing. He's out here putting himself out, you know, in front of the industry. He told me that he was just kind of brand new at that point too. So in that moment, it really struck me. This company must have an amazing culture for someone that's so new to be willing to come to an event where they're not known, they're total strangers, and this dude's out here, you know, putting himself out, showing the energy, really, really representing your brand well. And I think that really spoke a lot to what you've created and your mission and the fact that people are buying in and they're believing it. So tell me just a little bit about that, you know, as far as your team, the team that you've got right now, how many do you have? How many people are you looking to ultimately bring onto your team? Has that ever come into your mind as far as, you know, infinite possibilities, or do you have a specific number that you're looking to do and then say, hey, this is it?
Yeah, no. So the thing about a buying group is you can grow the group as far as members. You know, we've got about 270 members at the time of the recording of this show. We hope to have thousands. Our big, hairy, audacious goal is 10,000 members. Well, you can have 10,000 members and run it with 10 full-time employees. Going back to the Costco analogy, it's a pretty simple thing. Once somebody gets signed up, unless they're part of the paying community, there's not a lot of ongoing operational stuff you have to do. So, but we're a small team, man. We're 5 people. We're looking to bring on another sales guy, so we'll be 6 people total. And yeah, we're just a small, scrappy team. And you mentioned Caston. I mean, at events are the best thing for us. And per Robert's advice and strategic thinking, we've tried to make a booth that's really entertaining and unforgettable. So we've got Caston, who his energy is just off the charts at a trade show.
He's pretty entertaining, like, and unforgettable for
he
sure.
He is born to be at trade shows. Like he's great. And then we also bring a magician, and he's really good. Like, this is not some kid's birthday party magician. Like, he does some legit mentalism stuff like that. And he's ours. So don't anybody call her magician, but we've got him at every event pretty much because he can get people to stop. And then he'll say, and by the way, I want to show you some some magic around increasing your profits, you need to talk to Caston or Dylan or whoever at Limitless. And he just does this beautiful little handoff.
It was a perfect segue. And it was funny because that was what originally got me. And I told Caston at the moment, I was like, dude, I have this podcast and I had a magician from England on probably like a year earlier. And it was like, this guy did this trick. And I started talking to your magician. I said, he did this trick where I had to come up with this card in my head. And I don't know how he managed to do it, but like that was the one card that was facing. And your guy did that trick. And I was watching him because I was like, there's got to be, I can't figure it out. So if you guys are at a trade show, you need to stop by, try to figure out what's going on with that, because it really did create that atmosphere. And I told Caston, this coming IRE, I have made a proclamation. I've been doing my podcast for a little bit over 3 years. I want to find somebody at the IRE in San Antonio because I don't want to have to travel or do anything crazy. But I would like to do a podcast at the event, like how some of these guys set up their booths and they've got these giant, amazing sets and all that. And I think that would be something, like you said, just different that kind of brings more energy your way. And I'm going to try to find someone in San Antonio that would like to maybe do that just to see how something like that works. Because, I remembered Caston and I looked out and found him and said, dude, I got to talk to you more about this company because your enthusiasm just drew me in. And he checks up with me all the time. It's cool. He's a super guy. And I like the fact that you've got a small team and you guys are able to take care of so many people, because it probably is a very, I don't want to say stress-free because you're dealing with big dogs, but a pretty cool environment where you can just have that family feel and continue to grow and help. So that's amazing. Let me kind of start steering a little bit towards the finish line here. I know you've got some events that you've got this evening to do. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us on Keepin' It Rio. So I've got Limitless Roofing Group. I love it. I carry the wallet around that I got at the event. I saw you and we met at the TAMCO event here in San Antonio. So you're out and about, you're promoting your company. Now's a great opportunity for anybody that maybe hasn't heard of Limitless until today. What's a good way if they own a roofing business, whether it's a startup or it's someone that's doing 30, 40 or $100 million, what's a good way for them to get into the Limitless Roofing Group and some of the benefits that they can get through that process?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, the easiest way is to just go to limitlessroofinggroup.com. You can join for free. So imagine a free Costco membership. You join, you'll be prompted to book an onboarding call. And on that onboarding call, somebody like Caston will just take you through, like, here's your membership. Here's what's on the shelf. Do you want to save on general liability insurance? Do you want our TAMCO rebate program? Do you want our marketing deal? We just signed an agreement with Hook Agency. Do you want that program? You just pick and choose what you want. You're not obligated to do any of it. And then you can learn more about our community as well. But yeah, that's limitlessroofinggroup.com. And if anybody has questions, they can reach out to me on Facebook too. I'm trying to be pretty good about answering messages in Messenger.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I reached out and said, hey, bro, you want to be on Keepin' It Rio? And the man responded, and here we are. So definitely appreciate that. I respect what you're doing. And I sincerely, as a roofing company owner who is a member of Limitless Roofing Group, I thank you, because it's an opportunity that I would not have otherwise. With rebates and stuff, it's kind of, I was on that side of the industry, and I know that there are certain gates that you have to get to actually get good rebates, and it's not realistic for some of these companies. So you're giving them an opportunity to celebrate some of the successes that they are having in the industry and get a little bit back for the hard work. And at the end of the day, that can make them a little bit more competitive in the market. It can help them grow their company. Like you said, that's the whole purpose. So we appreciate that very much. And Dylan, this has been an awesome interview, man. We're going to do it again sometime down the road when you hit your 10,000. And I told Caston, I want to help you guys hit the 10,000 mark as well. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this, I always joke and say at least 1 million people are going to view this podcast. It may be 175 years from now, and both of us may be long gone. And at that point, Limitless may have hundreds of millions of people on board, but we're going to do our part. So thank you to everybody that watches. Check out Limitless Roofing Group. Dylan McCabe, thank you for your time today. And As always, episode 176. I appreciate everybody that supports Keeping It Rio, my sponsors, Roofer, and that's pretty much it. Until next time, y'all, keep on keeping it